So I can get like a sequel, right?
No.
You sure? I can be less
No.
money.
No.
I can cost less.
Nope.
I can have a new engine. I can use a pre-made engine.
No. None of that.
All right, man. I'll put my life
Yep, get in.
expectancy down.
Yep.
I don't want to get in though.
Yep. Alright. Get out of here.
Where do I even start with this game? I guess a good topic I could start on is the loss of horror in its entirety that this title went through, because the gameplay I can rant about later and how much of a mess it became. Also, this video is going to be the same structure as before, so strap in. It's going to be a long one. Ice Planet. Industrial Ice Planet? I mean, that's pretty much all you're going to get the entire time. You're on Tau Volantis 85% of the game, including the prologue. Tau Volantis is the first place the marker was found, so it's understandable to go there for the end of the story, but for a horror game, it's extremely open. It doesn't protrude scariness at all. I say this full well knowing that horror and scariness, as I put it, is a subjective topic. But the only terrifying part of Tau Volantis, in my opinion, was when you went inside buildings and caves, reminiscent to Dead Space 1 and Dead Space 2 with the claustrophobic environments, on which Tau Volantis rarely had any of it. All you were waiting for was just necromorphs to pop out of anywhere, and it rarely happened, and it was just snow. I say all of this, but Tau Volantis itself still looks amazing in my opinion, even for a 360 game by that standard. It still does not excuse the reuse of assets that were extremely noticeable this time around, and they cleverly hid it in Dead Space 2 and 1, but it was just reuse of assets, snow, cave, and all the ships were pretty much the same on the inside all this time around. Some unique geometry here and there, but it still had the same, oh look, metal stair, not unique metal stair. And just look, two completely different side missions, almost completely different side missions, would just use the same rooms but in a different order. All of this is just disappointing up until you get to Chapter 17, where you get to an alien ship that Dead Space has never covered before. And this place just looks amazing, but it suffers the same thing every other place in this game has. It's open. Very, very open. A lot of the alien ship is open, allowing you to see the necromorphs coming from a mile away, allowing them ample time to A, not be scared, and B, shoot from far away. Every single place suffers from that. It didn't matter. You had so much ample time to react to the necromorphs that what you experienced in Dead Space 1, you definitely were not going to experience in Dead Space 3 whatsoever. Dead Space 2 had a little bit of it, but Dead Space 3 just does not portray the same feeling you would get from Dead Space 1. Even if the advertisements say it's Dead Space as before, that is a lie. They knew how to build atmosphere. They knew how to build locations. They improved it just a little bit, but it didn't entirely work. The only reason why the alien ship worked is because it relies on the location itself, and it does work. Since this is basically a brand new location you don't know anything about compared to the repetitive open landscape of snow and reuse of inside places at points. Comparing this to the almost masterpiece that is Dead Space 1, the Ishimura was different at almost every turn in the entire ship, except backtracking for story reasons, but other than that, the setting of the alien ship was phenomenal to me. It shows just how far-reaching the necromorphs actually are in a sense, and for the story. Last thing I want to touch upon is how bright everything is. I know I've already compared this game to Dead Space 1 a couple of times, but it's in the same game series, so it has to live up to its own potential, and it doesn't. Dead Space 1 was so dark, it created tension, anxiety, suspense around every corner and every place that was dark because you didn't know what was going to happen. Dead Space 3, everything is so bright. You can see everything. Like, even in dark places, you could still see the formation of where everything is, and with the flashlights on the weapons, it didn't really matter. It felt like all of it was so bright because they wanted to show so much, but they didn't show anything. Felt like everything could have had more. But, hey, at least space and Tau Volantis look really well, right?
I just called to say, I'm moving on. I have to.
Again, still, I am bad at explaining stories and getting my thoughts across about them, but as philosophical as I can get, Dead Space is a story about human greed and a little bit about religions too. Humans used all of their available resources past the point of no return and expanded out into space looking for more. But before all of that, we have Michael Altman coming across a marker on Earth and knowing he can use it for power. Yet, when he reports it to the American government and the repercussions that using it for power has, he is promptly assassinated. Enter Dead Space 1, with the first major incident of greed occurring, mining a marker and making more of that marker. Enter Dead Space 2, where we see the rise and prominence of the Unitology cult. Then we enter Dead Space 3, where their ideals almost come to fruition, and where Isaac says no a lot. And that will be the closest I will ever get to Ryan Holliger in terms of philosophy and pulling stuff out of the ether. But with that, we're on to Tal Volantis. Never mind, we're fighting humans on not Tal Volantis.
Don't forget me! Don't forget!
No, I can be disappointed later. Now we'll be on Tal Volantis. Nope, still not on Tal Volantis. Okay, finally, we're on Tal Volantis. But now I have to explain everything that happened before Tal Volantis. So, after everything that Isaac has been through, he's called to do even more, as Ellie has gone missing and has sent out an SOS signal. And they were boyfriend and girlfriend at one point. I don't know when that happened. It just did, and now we're told about it. Then, the place Isaac has slowly been losing his mind the entire time explodes thanks to the Unitologist, so he has to run away with Carver and Norton into a ship to go rescue Ellie, whilst all of the Unitology cult members want Isaac dead for thwarting their plans for convergence. They find Ellie and more unimportant characters, get a new ship, and people die. Because no one wants to put on their helmets inside of a ship that has a giant hole in it, because we're in a cutscene. The lapse in logic is astounding to me. Okay, now we're on Tal Volantis, where the entire meat of the story can begin. And essentially the story beats of the story is meet up with Ellie and co. Argue with Norton on whether or not to go home or destroy the marker homeworld thingy, because Norton feels challenged for Ellie's love and whatnot because Isaac exists, repeatedly while surviving on Tal Volantis from Necromorphs and Danik's Unitology cult. That's it. There are many things that happen along the way, but in the grand scheme of things, none of it was important at all. And now that you have a basis for what the story is, it devolves into Norton dying after betraying Isaac, for understandable means, in my opinion. Old Dude dying, Solomon dying, Ellie dying, and then Isaac going after Danik. Danik being the one trying to stop Isaac and co. from stopping the Brethren Moon from becoming real, and Convergence starting all over again. Convergence being a conglomeration of a bunch of necromorphs made into a Brethren Moon, and think of a Brethren Moon as the Majora's Mask Moon, but faster, and it can do just more than fall into one location. All of this is happening while Isaac is having forced bro moments with Carver because of a co-op mode that shouldn't have been in the game. So, it ends with a, oh hey look, Ellie's alive and held hostage by Danik, who took the Codex from us after we found out what to actually do with it from a frozen alien body called Rosetta? So we took the Codex back earlier just to give it back to him to free Ellie, which I understand, but then he dies, us not being able to kill him, and awakening the moon in the process, where we get a really easy final boss battle, killing the Brethren Moon and killing Isaac and Carver. So after Ellie confirms that Isaac is pretty much dead and that she has no marker signal, she just goes back to Earth space, saying it's all over, pretty much, and that Isaac did it. So, this was a story, I guess. I don't know if it's entirely good or bad. I'm leaning more to the good side than the bad side, but not entirely. I guess I'm more leaning to the meh than good or bad. But I mean, it makes sense. It's a story that corroborates with the previous two, and I haven't touched on the DLC yet, so for a story that would have ended here because Dead Space 4 is cancelled, it's fine, I guess? It has two unimportant characters and a believable antagonist compared to Tideman in Dead Space 2, and a good setting for the story being the place humans found a marker on another planet with aliens, and it's just a trilogy ender.
Machine as well.
Stay away from that machine, Danik.
No.
So, in Dead Space 3, we have a lot more characters to work with, meaning more characters to judge on why they are good or bad. The good characters this time around are Isaac, Danik, Ellie, and Norton to a degree. Isaac is Isaac, and he's just suffering through these games as he always has been, and is still trying to be a good person and destroy the marker to save humanity, and try to be better after Ellie needed help. Our antagonist this time around, Danik, was an actual antagonist. He provided something to the player to put a figurehead for the Unitology, and was all around just actually being a menace to everyone. Hunting all of them down only to try and stop Isaac alone from preventing convergence, which they really wanted, and overall was just a better character and antagonist than Tideman in the previous game. Danica as an antagonist for the series alone for Dead Space 3 worked really well in my opinion. Ellie this time around was basically just kind of a support character and just the leader of this mission, until she had her few key moments, and when Isaac and Ellie did interact again, she was kind of put in the background for what Isaac was doing with the other characters, and overall goal was Ellie in helping her, but it didn't really show in her character. It just showed through Isaac's character more than hers. Overall, not a bad character, but overall not an entirely great character, so she's still in the good section. I believe that Norton is also a good character. You may not like him, but to me his actions are justified in his head, therefore making him a believable character, and that's what I want to see in characters. They want to need to be believable for everyone to relate to them, and kind of just be written as a good character in general. If characters are believable, then we can believe their actions and what they're doing in the story. If you cannot believe a character and their actions, then you question pretty much logically everything in the story. Norton's actions are justifiable and make sense. He just wants himself and Ellie to be safe and away from everything that is going on, while Isaac is going along with Ellie's plan. Therefore, Norton feels threatened by Isaac returning and getting affection from Ellie. I don't like him, but he was still well written as a character, unlike some of the other characters in this game. Now, I don't think the rest of the characters are bad per se, like Carver for example, but they were all just unimportant in the grand scheme of all of it. For example, Solomon and the Old Man. Solomon is a sweetheart, but just didn't do much except for two things. A, help get the marker signal, and B, then be a scientist, and then died because she took way too long in an elevator, and everyone could see with the death coming from a mile away. The old guy, on the other hand, didn't do anything either. He just died of hypothermia and talked to you twice, once for snowshoes and the other on a side mission. I mean, I guess you can count the first time you meet him, but he says like a couple things and was just injured the entire time. And lastly, that just leaves Carver, which sucks because his character was completely sacked due to gameplay reasons. Carver is a special case, because the game doesn't feel like it was built with co-op in mind. Felt like they redid his character for co-op just to have a new thing to do, which ruined his character potential and character in general if you only play solo, which is what I did. If you look at the progression of the character, you have co-op missions with Carver that deals with his demons, which subsequently aligns with the cutscene of Carver telling Isaac his family is dead, and Isaac listening to one of the audio messages between Carver and his wife and his kid.
Recorded message playback.
Hey, look, I'm on patrol. Make this quick, all right?
It's his birthday.
Shit.
Is that Dad? Thanks for the present, Dad. When are you coming home?
Soon.
Okay. I love you, Dad. Who wants to play soldiers?
You gave him a soldier.
John, he idolizes you.
Well, you better get that idea out of his head. You got that? I gotta go. Love you.
When you play on solo, you do not get the co-op missions, you get the cutscene, the audio message, and 3 forced bro moments up until chapter 17, where you have a major forced bro moment as if they were fighting alongside each other the entire time, which they didn't, and they had very limited interactions with each other in the cutscenes. His character would have been so much better if there was not a co-op aspect to this game. All they did was fragment his character and ruin it. If they really wanted to go with co-op in this game, they should have just gone the route of Resident Evil 5. Even though I think this game was released before Resident Evil 5, they should have gone that route because Resident Evil 5 pretty much did an AI character co-op partner well. To wrap up my thoughts on the characters that they focused on, aka the main characters besides Carver, were pretty much written well. They were the characters from the previous games, they followed what they usually do, and the antagonist himself was actually an antagonist compared to Tideman of the last game. The unimportant characters were basically unimportant to the grand scheme of everything. They were just there to give like a body count and kind of make us feel emotional, which it didn't. And Carver, man, Carver was just a massive screw up on Visceral's end. Carver wasn't the only screw up of this entire game, and it pisses me off because the gameplay is even more scuffed than before. Dead Space 1 was almost a masterpiece. Dead Space 2, on the other hand, was a little confused, but it had the spirit. Dead Space 3 is just, what in the... You just witnessed a necromorph being stasised by the plasma cutter. That also has max damage, a higher rate of fire, and a higher clip size. And on the other hand, you can meet the line, because all I did was essentially this. Because I'm just allowed to do this now, thanks to the new weapon crafting and upgrade system. Which, to me, is the start of the destruction of the resource management that the first game and second game almost did perfectly. Weapon crafting has its own issues, like no clip size cap, ridiculously crafted weapons such as the line, where it's just 2 line guns with only damage and clip size upgrades, and the stasis cutter. Just look at them both. You were allowed to make your own weapons, which I appreciate because Isaac's character is an engineer, making it an extension to the gameplay for the player. And it doesn't take that many resources to make any of the parts, and you can find them easily. To find a majority of them at one time, use a resource drone and wait for it to get back at a place that's making a pinging sound. Or looting the dead bodies of necromorphs, but with that in effect, it screws up the rest of the resource management that this game has. Or series had. I see Dead Space 1 as almost the perfect combination of Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 1, but also having its own identity. Dead Space 3, on the other hand, is a more scuffed and or just more streamlined version of the first 2 games. The resource management that 1 and 2 had was phenomenal. You managed your ammo for each weapon because each weapon has its own specific ammo, whilst managing health items and conductors for money. The money being used for what you needed or what you wanted to buy, including rig upgrades in 1 and nodes in 1 and 2. This game takes this concept, throws it off a cliff, lets it rot in the gorge before body slamming it. I personally want to know what the hell they were thinking when they were making this. One quick fix that I came up with at the top of my head to bring at least some stress of managing inventory as a self-proclaimed horror game that'll honestly still hold what they wanted to do with the game is have a heavy type of ammo and a compact type of ammo to go alongside with the frames. The frames being a heavy and or compact frame. But now all you do is manage health and ammo, and saying that alone is bad, so I'm going to go into detail. You only have one type of ammo for every single gun that you make in the entire game, and because of this, I had enough ammo for the funny number. There are no credits to buy health or ammo, instead they replaced it with a system of resources to make these items. You use these random items that the game gives you after killing necromorphs, stomping on boxes, and from the resource drones to make ammo, health, and the previously talked about weapons, as well as attachments and rig upgrades. The resource management is essentially gone. You don't have to worry about any of the extra items anymore. There isn't specific ammo for the plasma cutter called plasma energy. There isn't specific ammo to the line gun. It's gone completely, replaced by ammo clip. That's all it's called. What also doesn't help is that Dead Space 3 starts you off with 20 out of 25 in your inventory, and you get it randomly upgraded to 25 at around chapter 14 to 15, or maybe even earlier. I didn't know. I didn't pay attention. I didn't need to pay attention. I could just pick up everything blindly. The only time I ever cared was when I had too much ammo that I couldn't pick up a weapon part, so I dropped ammo in a survival horror game to pick up a weapon part and or chip. Because I just had so much ammo. Again, enough for the funny number and beyond. Speaking of the aforementioned chips, I can talk about the upgrade system now. The new upgrade system is you get chips that either upgrade your damage, clip size, reload speed, or rate of fire. All you do is put it in the weapon, and for the rig upgrades, you just upgrade it. Use the resources to upgrade the rig. I personally like upgrade systems like this, where you just use resources to upgrade to the next step and all, but it doesn't work for Dead Space. It was never built upon this upgrade system. It was built on the power nodes. And I know I don't like the you'll never fully upgrade something on one playthrough of a story horror game aspect, but I sure do miss the power nodes in Dead Space 3. Mostly for the fact that in Dead Space 2 it had repercussions and or benefits to using the node, such as, I have 3 nodes on me, should I use all 3 to upgrade my cutter for more damage and clip size now, or should I save it to open an extra resource door? But what if I don't have enough damage to survive until the next resource door? Or what if I find another node on the way through the story? That one item that is used for just 2 things in Dead Space 2 set up a bunch of scenarios to think about whilst traversing the game. Dead Space 3 has tungsten bars and chips. Both of those can be made at any bench at any time. Tungsten bars are used to open doors for more resources, kind of like the power node doors in Dead Space 2, whilst chips are used to upgrade your guns with busted damage and clip size and fire rate of fire and damage, etc., so on and so forth. Tungsten is also used to make gun parts and attachments, but you never think about, oh god, do I have enough tungsten to open the next door? Or do I have enough blank to make this item? Because you just keep getting more and more resources to make more and more ammo, health, and as well as finding ammo, health, and resources off of looting the dead bodies on top of resource drones and side missions. Universal ammo itself is just a measly 100 scrap metal, and I had over 6,000 of it by the end of the game, including just having ammo from playing the game, whilst health is also just a simple 40 to 240 somatic gel. I ended the game with 800 and a surplus of healing items. They just dropped the ball on resource management at this time, just making it a slight afterthought until you have a surplus of one item, say ammo or health, having to drop it to pick up whatever you want, and then going on with your day, not caring. Resource management went hand in hand with the suits in this franchise. But in this game, suits aren't even a part of the gameplay anymore. They're more closely related to the story, and the two that were related to the story was at the beginning of the game because the rest of it didn't matter. Each suit this time around is just cosmetic. In Dead Space 1, each suit upgrade provided more inventory and armor, whilst in Dead Space 2, each suit also provided more inventory and armor, while also giving a unique bonus to the suit, and you had to find the schematic for the suit, including that the upgraded version of a certain suit in Dead Space 2 could have a better unique perk or just a better version of a previous unique perk. Dead Space 3 just throws this stuff at you. Inventory size upgrade? Bam, chapter 13 or 14. You won't even know. Maybe 15, I don't remember. And you want a new suit? Bam, you have a new suit available at the kiosk. It's a little notification it gives you, because you don't have to earn them, they're just given to you. It feels lackluster. In the previous games, you actually had to find suits. Oh, Dead Space 1, you just earned them as well through the store, but you had to buy them. They weren't just given to you. You had to save enough money to go ahead and see if you could buy it. Dead Space 2, you actually could find it, say, behind lockers, or it's like, oh, look, there's an empty little area over there. Maybe I can find something. You go over there and find it. The two things that I can give the new suit kiosk is that you can switch suits on the fly in a little list without having to use the safe, and personally, I think streamlining the upgrades for the rigs was fine. I like it. Not as much as the other upgrades, but this one I like. After ranting about the guns and the suits and the resource management, what do we use all this on again? Necromorphs. Wait, we're using it on humans too? We're using it on humans too. Necromorphs and humans. Why the fuck are we fighting humans? Is it because I said I would rather you guys focus on the unitology in my Dead Space 2 video that I uploaded in 2020? No, because this game was made in 2012. Why the fuck are we fighting humans? I guess it works for the story, but you sacrifice having just the Necromorphs being the horror in the gameplay, the humans being the horror in this story, and kind of QTE-wise. You now fight them both in gameplay and QTE, but fighting the humans is actually a joke. A majority of the time, and I'm saying 95% of the time, they take one shot to the head. It's not entirely clear, it's basically just RNG. On standard it does most of the time, but it doesn't really work. They're still just easy if you stand behind cover because they will come to you exposing everything about their body and missing their shots still. They also introduced a useless mechanic, in my opinion at least, being the crouch. It really doesn't do anything. You could argue that it does something in like 2 of the human fights, and they're kind of rare and in between, but it doesn't do anything. I mean, I guess it's not entirely useless. I can make Isaac go unga bunga. Speaking of unga bunga, the Necromorphs are pretty much just the same. They changed the pack to the feeders and allowed you to stealth around them. And I guess that's an argument to allow the crouch to be somewhat useful, but you can still just walk around them because all they noticed you by was light and noise. They added like 2 or 3 more Necromorphs and added an alien variants too, aka just one alien Necromorph, and they were still underutilizing certain Necromorphs, such as the exploding children, which weren't there until chapter, I think, 18. Which is the chapter before the end of the game. Throwing the actual enemies aside and how they lost all their horror, being relegated to just having a shit ton of them thrown at you over and over again, and relying only on their design to be the horror of this game, they still do what they're intended to do. They present a challenge for you to take your time and precisely aim at the body parts to take them down in the way that you would think is the most tactical and or optimal, including in the flying sections as well. QTEs, on the other hand, at least when applied to Dead Space, all they were used for was mashing A when a Necromorph got on you or certain story beats would happen. I just wish that a lot of other games did what Dead Space 1 and 2 did, where they would have interactable set pieces that were interactable with the game's base gameplay already. Such as the train scene in Dead Space 2, where you're still able to control Isaac as he's sliding down the train, Necromorph still being able to attack him, and then as you exit the back of the train, you're now hung upside down by your foot whilst Necromorphs are still coming at you. You can still use the game's base mechanics, shoot, aim, and you can use telekinesis as well. Dead Space 3 doesn't really have it. They just have QTEs of mash A, and that was used a lot of the time in this game. But there was one section where you're scaling a wall and the one where you're going down a mountain in the prologue. I guess those count, but you're not really doing anything except go down farther. But QTEs are a wide topic of things to cover that deserves a video from someone who is not me that can do everything better than I can right now. But if I could go on a tangent about QTEs, I would say when applied to Dead Space, they're used for moments that couldn't be applied to the engine's gameplay, and they're also used when developers want to envision something for the story, but again can't be applied to the base engine of the game. To elaborate, QTEs broadly range from complete laziness to something that needs a little bit more special attention to. For example, if we take Dead Space and Resident Evil 4, the base gameplay is point, shoot, run around, punch things, pick up things. That's basically all that the base gameplay is. You got little knife attacks in RE4, and you got station telekinesis in Dead Space 3, but the base gameplay is just run around, shoot, pick up loot, etc. Now, when we apply QTEs to it, it can either range from complete laziness of our character running away from, I don't know, say a giant boulder, which in the gameplay itself, we already have the mechanic to run, so why can't we just run? Why do we have a QTE for it? Then it could also go to Isaac is climbing this giant necromorph, scaling it, and then things are falling down onto him, and he has to pull out his weapon and his knife. I think he has a knife. I think he picked up a knife somewhere, or he could just pick a random knife. Anyway, climbing it over and over again, pulling out his plasma cutter, shooting off its tendrils. Some of that we can do, but some of it I don't think we can do in tandem. I don't think we can climb, knife, and shoot at the same time. So to me, QTEs are also used for story beats and cutscenes and such that the gameplay cannot handle, and the developers, for the story at least, want to implement into the game. This also isn't saying that QTEs aren't done well in certain games, but a majority of the time games implement QTEs and they suck. Dead Space implements them in cutscene-like elements, where if you're trying to hold a screwdriver from going into your eye, or if you're trying to get a necromorph off of you and it has gameplay repercussions, you get the necromorph off of you, it'll more than likely Isaac will kick his head off, or kill it in general, or rip something off of it to benefit you. Resident Evil 4, in my opinion, implements it the worst way, because we already have the mechanic of running. One of the first cutscenes in the entire game is we're running away from a boulder, but it's a QTE. We're spamming A if you're playing on GameCube, and I think A on Xbox, and then A on something else, and we're just running away from the boulder. Same thing with if on the boat battle, our leg is getting wrapped around by a tentacle. We take the knife out and cut it in a cutscene. We already have those mechanics. We already have the mechanic of running. We already have the mechanic of using the knife. Why couldn't we just use those mechanics when they applied? That's all I personally have to say about QTEs. They're either a completely lazy way of getting out of implementing something new, or an interesting way to implement certain situations or cutscenes or something cool in a story. I don't have a definitive opinion on it. I just think it's something that can be better, and since it ranges to pretty much every single game that implements a QTE, or every single game in general, it's something that can be improved across the entirety of, the gaming landscape. That'll be my small tangent out of the way. I don't have anything else to talk about in the general gameplay section. It's not as good as Dead Space 1 or Dead Space 2, and I'm pretty sure someone who's way better at talking about this stuff than me can talk about QTEs in general. So, for now, I can talk about The Awakening. Before I start talking about Awakening, I'd like to get to the microtransactions, and they are egregious to a point. The scavenger bot upgrades are the worst, followed by the weapons, then the suits. The scavenger bot microtransactions are basically pay to progress faster because it increases the amount of bots gather, and the others how fast they gather in general. It's an increase by 50% at least. The last one being a personality changer for the bots, depending on how you treat them, but it's completely optional. The suits and weapons, on the other hand, will be your call if they're egregious or not, because the suits are just cosmetic variants of the base game suits, so if you like them better than the base game suits, it's up to you. And the weapons, I don't know if they are objectively better than any weapon you can make on your own, or better than the plasma cutter and the line gun you're forced to make. At a base level, they are egregious. They are selling scavenger bot upgrades that progress you through the game faster. Weapons and suits, on the other hand, could be objectively better or objectively not, in your opinion. Awakening is an actual DLC, though. It expands upon the end of the Dead Space 3 story and continues on with Isaac and Carver. I haven't personally played the DLC myself, but assuming for a second, I believe that they didn't really change much, if anything, about the gameplay itself, not the atmosphere, which I'll talk about in a second, but the gameplay in general they couldn't change because it's just a DLC adding on top of the game, not changing the base game as a whole, like Anthem 2.0 that will never come out. Therefore, all I can talk about is the story of Awakening because I have watched some of the cutscenes and I read the story of it on the wiki. Without further ado, here's the story of Awakening. After miraculously surviving, so miraculous in fact that the wiki doesn't even know, Isaac and Carver wake up on Tau Volantis and make it their goal to get back to Earth space. So they go ahead and go do that. And they suffer hallucinations and from the hands of Unitology cultists the entire time, whilst not trusting each other in their own hallucinations, but eventually they do. They skip drive off the planet to the nearest ship, but then they find out that ship doesn't have a shock drive, so they can't get back to Earth space. Then they go looking around and stumble across the CMS Terra Nova, one of the first ships you find in the base game, and, well, the Circle, a new thing of Unitology people. After dealing with the Circle, they go insane more, they hallucinate more, and install a shock drive after they stop going insane, revealing that the Brother Moons know where Earth was all along, and was making them hallucinate. So they get to the head of the CMS Terry, warp drive it to Earth space, and radio to see if anyone can pick them up. But they get no answer, and all they hear is necromorphs attacking on Earth. They then look up, see 4 Brethren Moons come out from behind the Earth, and then one appears in front of them, making them either hallucinate more, or just straight up kill them. And canonically, that's the end right there. To talk about the DLC itself though, and story-wise, if you're just going to end the entirety of Dead Space on the fact that we don't know if they are dead completely now, we don't know if Ellie's dead, we don't know who's dead, after just ending the base game with, oh look, Isaac says something at the end of the credits, now they're all dead. I don't think this was needed. I think you just needed to make a sequel because that's what everyone was anticipating. That's basically my thought on that. Gameplay, I cannot personally tell you anything about it. I did read that they added a new model for the pack and made them overall scarier, and one for the hunter as well. I think it was for the hunter, and the humans this time actually resembled necromorphs. I did read that people said that it went back to a horror element though, and if it did, I'm extremely glad. The base game didn't focus on horror or action adventure. They had mixed, confused moments. One moment you were sneaking around a pack, the next moment there was nothing, or you were just running away, or you're just running around another empty room in general. Atmosphere-wise, I don't know if they made entirely new environments, or they just reused the inside of ships like they did for all the side missions, inside places, and overall just outside. They reused a bunch, and you can notice it very easily. Overall, I don't think the DLC was necessary, at least story-wise. Gameplay-wise, I didn't play it, but kind of. It would have given people hope for a more horror-centered Dead Space 4, but why not just go with a sequel? Overall, we're never going to get a sequel now. The DLC just costed them more money, and they just gave it a mercy death right here. I hope understandably that I am upset that it had to end here, but I understand why it ended here. It was costing too much to make the game, they made a DLC on top of it, and they weren't getting enough money back for making the game, so why not kill it at its worst point? The game kept going downward with each title and how good it was, in my opinion at least. So this is where Dead Space ends. Canonically at least. Theoretically I've got like 4 endings that could have happened after it. But it doesn't matter. It's done. The series is over right here. So I guess I can just wrap it up and give a recap of all the other games. Just including the side games. I haven't covered those yet. Dead Space 1 is the closest to a masterpiece I personally have ever experienced. The blend of atmosphere, structure, and mystery one location contained alone was impressive, as well as on top of a third-person perspective that was getting notoriety at the time alongside Gears of War, it included a new perspective on horror games, especially ones that could take place in space. Dead Space 2, on the other hand, only expanded the gameplay side and story of the universe of this franchise, improving the way things interact with each other in the game, in my opinion at least. But it suffered with its atmosphere and what made the first game good by focusing more on action than psychological horror in space. Dead Space 3 just results in the epitome of fixing something that isn't broken, as well as losing sight of what you are and or what you were. If Dead Space 3 was just called Man in Space Experiences Spooks, this game would be roughly an 8.5 out of 10. But it's not. It's called Dead Space 3, a game that lost sight of what made the franchise amazing, leaving its roots for something that didn't work and ended up getting a mercy death. I'm sad it had to end in this way, not at its highest moment, but at its worst. And to sum it all up, Dead Space 3 is a massive disappointment. Thank you for watching.